Afternoon, and welcome to the 145th annual meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association as part of the celebration of Harvard's 364th commencement. My name is Nancy Sinsabaugh, and I'm here with my partner Rennie Little, of the great class of 1955. Rennie and his classmates are celebrating their 60th reunion this week.
Thank you, Nancy. Nancy graduated from the college in 1976 and received her MBA from Harvard Business School in 1978. She's been a member of the committee for the Happy Observance of Commencement for over 20 years and is retiring this year as the Alumni Association's treasurer. This is, I believe, her 9th year of broadcasting the afternoon exercises of commencement.
Yes, and as you can see, I'm wearing the official women's hat for the Happy Observance of Commencement Committee. I've been wearing this hat since 2004, and in 2013, other women were invited to wear this hat as well. We would like to extend a particular welcome to Harvard's newest alumni, the 6,600 graduates who this morning joined the Fellowship of Educated Men and Women. And we would also like to welcome their parents, their spouses and families, and all who have supported them throughout their studies.
We're here 8 steps up on the, stage left of the Tercentenary Theater in what's called the Treehouse to broadcast the afternoon exercises for you. This is the first year under the leadership of our new executive director of the association, Philip Lovejoy, and we're pleased to welcome him upon the retirement of Jack Reardon, class of 60, who's celebrating his 55th reunion this week. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank Rachel Lamson, Director of Board Services for the AJA, and her assistant Kate Freed, who has put together a thick syllabus for us today, which is very helpful. And also to thank Diane McDonald and Deborah Smullion from the Alumni Association's Class Report Office for providing the information on the 5th and 10th classes who are unioning this week.
And here you can see, Rennie, the alumni procession beginning. It's a Harvard tradition that dates back several centuries to have alumni process on the day of the afternoon of the commencement exercises. Ralph Waldo Emerson of the class of 1821 wrote of the alumni procession in 1836. And this is what he wrote in his journal on that day. Cambridge at any time is full of ghosts, but on that day the anointed eye saw the crowd of spirits that mingled with the procession in the vacant spaces, year by year, as the classes proceeded, and then the far longer train of ghosts that followed the company of the men that wore before us the college honors and the laurels of the state, the long winding train reaching back into eternity. So here we see the 2015 version of that long winding train reaching back.
Our oldest alumni today is Robert Rothschild of the class of 1939. He would be leading off the procession. And our oldest female from Radcliffe is Evelyn Richmond, the class of 1941. And they lead off the parade, followed by the oldest classes, which is what you're seeing going through now. We're just saw 1943 go through, and as you can see, they're making their way. Now they will go up to the front steps of Widener, where they will be greeted by the President Faust. At the same time, you'll see coming over to the stage right, actually, just beginning to come in now, the class of 1960 that's having their 50th and the 25th reunion class. And they're coming in from the Seabrook Quadrangle, and they will be met by the head of the Alumni Association this year to greet them, and they'll be coming down the aisle.
As you know, Rennie, Harvard College was founded in 1636 to train ministers for the Massachusetts Bay Colony. Originally called New College, it was founded in the town we now call Cambridge, but at the time was called Newtown. They founded the college in 1636, but there was no money to pay teachers for the scholars until 1638, when a minister from Charlestown, John Harvard, died and left half of his fortune and all of his books to New College. In gratitude for this bequest, the college was renamed Harvard College, and the town was renamed Cambridge in honor of Cambridge University, from which John Harvard and many of the current ministers of the colony had graduated. We can see the bagpipes that often herald the beginning of commencement, and here comes the members of the 25th reunion class of 1990 marching down the aisles.
They will be filling in on the stage, on the stage right, and the 50th class, which will follow them in, eventually will be filling in the stage, or 35th, I guess, it's on the stage left. Oh.
There were those that believe that Harvard invented reunions. What happened in the early years, the first commencement was in 1642, and members of the elders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony were so concerned that the college might not survive that they decided they would come out to Cambridge to listen to the graduates perform their orations. And the next year, 1643, they invited the graduates from 1642 to come back, and so on, up to this year, 2015. Graduates are invited to come back, to see each other, to reunion, and to enjoy beautiful days like today here in Tercentenary Theater.
Nancy will talk a little bit about some of those early days when they brought in elephants in 1769, was it? And those days were quite, there were two sections to commencement, the first part being the graduate part, where we still hear the Latin oration and the English oration. And the afternoon was at the time was devoted to the Phi Beta Kappa exercises. And then in 1840, the Alumni Association was formed, which is having its 75th anniversary this year, going to be celebrated next year. And the first honorary degree recipients, we saw 10 of them this morning, and we'll see them this afternoon, although they don't have to do anything, was Benjamin Franklin, was offered an honorary degree for his expertise in electricity.
In the 17th century, each commencement day was a holiday of annual joy in learning. And there were orations by the graduates in Hebrew, Greek, and Latin. We did have a Latin oration this morning, but we no longer have anything in Hebrew or Greek. And then in the afternoon, there were Latin debates between the graduates. And again, we don't have any debates this afternoon. Rennie, I'm sorry, my Latin isn't up to debating with you.
No, I don't think we're going to debate Latin, and we'll just try to get enough English to you so you understand what's going on. You see the classes coming in with some wonderful hats showing up on your screen now that various classes women have. And there's, that looks like, is that my class coming in? Yes, there's Joe coming in, and a lot of familiar faces there. Just coming in, Radcliffe and Harvard class of 1955. We've just had 4 days of reunioning, which is great fun, and we're now on the tail end of the reunion, although tomorrow we will have Radcliffe Day, and we'll hear from Ruth Bader Ginsburg at that time.
Good times with ample food and drink are a Harvard tradition at commencement and alumni celebrations, along with some unusual entertainment. In 1797, a live elephant was brought from Providence, Rhode Island, along with people dressed as mermaids and mummies. Rennie, I'm sorry to say I don't think we'll see any mermaids or mummies or elephants today, but you never know what you're going to see on Harvard commencement. According to Harvard's charter, any resident of Cambridge can bring his or her sheep into Harvard Yard so they can graze on the grass here. And Rennie, one year I want to acquire a sheep so I can bring it here and have it graze and be one of the unusual entertainments of a commencement.
Well, as long as we don't have to wear any sheepskins, Nancy, that would be helpful. It's a warm day here, and those who are lucky enough not to have to wear these monkey suits are going to be lucky. But I generally lose about 5 or 6 pounds on days like this.
Another Harvard tradition is the beer tent, which is in the old yard. Beginning in the 17th century, the university would offer a glass of beer to anybody who came to commencement. And it's recorded that in 1703, the 14 barrels of beer were drunk. But today, if you're in Boston or at Cambridge and you want a glass of beer, you can come to the beer tent and you will be offered a glass of beer.
And this is the kind of weather when a lot of beer gets drunk. The Harvard each year elects a chief marshal for commencement. And this year it's Farai Shadea. The chief marshal for commencement is always elected from the 25th reunion class. And there are generally about 8 applicants. Both Nancy and I have chaired that committee. And the 8 candidates eventually are weighted down to the chief marshal, and those, so we call them also-rans, become part of the marshal's aides, A-I-D-S. In the morning, they're A-I-D-E-S. I like to point that out. And the chief marshal does not represent his or her class. She represents the Alumni Association itself. And the Committee for the Happy Observance of Commencement, of course, has such activities as getting all of these parades lined up, the general alumni spread, where a lot of people enjoy the cool weather out there and watch from the LED screen, and of course the various spreads. The Chiefs Free Spread, which the older graduates after their 50th reunion are coming in from, and the general alumni spread for all of those who are not reunioning, and reunioning takes place with the 5, 10, 1, every year we have these reunions going on. And then, of course, the Chief Marshal spread, where the distinguished guests and honorans and family and faculty, which this year is being held, Nancy will tell you, in Widener.
Yes, Widener Library. It's the 100th anniversary of Harvard's great library, and today we had the President's Lunch inside the library. We at Harvard are somewhat grateful are quite grateful to the Widener family. Unfortunately, Harry Elkins Widener of the class of 1907, who had a vast book collection, he was in London to purchase a first edition of Dickens, and he came home on the Titanic. He and his brother drowned, and his mother and sister survived. He had left his book collection, including a Gutenberg Bible, to the university with the provision that suitable housing for the books be found. And his mother donated the money to build Widener Library, and it opened 100 years ago this next month. So we are celebrating the 100th anniversary of Widener Library.
The death on the Titanic also became prominent at Harvard, because in my undergraduate days when I came in, we had to take a swimming test, and that was based on the fact that Widener did not make it at the Titanic. And at that time, of course, that's how the swimming coach would recruit his team. He would watch the freshmen doing their swimming test and be able to pick out those he felt would be the swimmers of the future for Harvard.
Rennie, people ask me, why is Harvard commencement on Thursday? It's because in the 19th century, athletic contests were added to the annual commencement and alumni festivities. And these contests had to be coordinated with our rival from New Haven, Yale. Yale commencement was on Monday, the baseball contests were on Wednesday, Harvard commencement was Thursday, and the crew races were on Fridays. And we still have that tradition that the commencement is held the 38th Thursday after the beginning of the fall term.
I wanted to let you know who our chief mark for commencement this year is. Farai Shidea. She was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, and graduated with a BA from Harvard, magna cum laude, in 1990. She's an award-winning writer and journalist. Farai has been a reporter in political analysis for NPR, CNN, and ABC News, and Newsweek, and is also the author of 5 books and a professor and writer in residence at New York University. She was in Adams House as an undergraduate, came back to Harvard in 2012 as a fellow at the Institute of Politics. Farai is also the founder of poppinpolitics.com, an online journal that trains 18 to 29-year-olds for the hottest genre of careers in journalism.
Rennie, around this time every year during the alumni procession, things start looking a little more chaotic. And I want to read what the Reverend Peter Gomes, the former Pusey minister in Memorial Church and Plummer professor of Christian morals, what he wrote about commencement. Someone observing the rather casual dignity of the day remarked that commencement is more like a lawn party than a ballet, and a less charitable but more astute observer suggested that the vast assemblage in formation in the old yard was very much like that wonderfully chaotic game of croquet with flamingos and hedgehogs in Alice in Wonderland. First-time visitors to the scene are rather horrified at what appears to be rank confusion, but then they remember that this is, after all, Harvard, where conformity, even of self-preservation, has been elevated to the rank of an original sin. That it works at all as a tribute to patience and goodwill and the general sense that, come what may, the day is to be enjoyed. As you look around the yard today, you'll see many men in top hats and women in hats like mine. We are members of the Happy Committee, and it's our job to keep the people moving, to make sure people are happy on commencement, and to try to keep the ceremony on time, which, as you know, is always a difficult task.
The Happy Committee, as Nancy says, has really 3. It's the Committee for the Happy Observance of Commencement. And we have 3 responsibilities. We were first founded and used in the afternoon for just the part of the ceremony of commencement, which is run by the Harvard Alumni Association, not the Athletic Association. And the 3 responsibilities are what we call crowd management, which is what you see that's going on now, the bringing in of the alumni through different processions, coming in from different places to fill up their seats. The second part, of course, has already just happened, and that's the spreads. As I mentioned, the general alumni spread, which is for the alumni who are not reunioning. The tree spread, which has obviously grown considerably over the last number of years, for those graduates over their 50th reunion. And finally, what's our third one, Nancy? Spreads, crowd management, and I'm going to come up with it in a minute. That's terrible. I should have it down here.
We have a saying on the Happy Committee: if you can't answer them, confuse them.
Yeah.
So that adds to the general chaos of the day.
Yeah, I was going to note that one of the fun things we have, when I first started on the committee about 34 years ago or so, we only had about 15 members, and we were responsible for the spreads and doing all the work. Now I believe we have 88 members. We meet 3 times a year, in the fall, in the winter, and in the spring, and then actually the 4th time, which is what was going on here. And of course, one of our big concerns is weather. We never know whether we're going to get a day like today, and so we have to have an extreme weather plan. In fact, we have a plan that goes from little rain to a good deal of rain to thunders and lightning storms to tornadoes, and we are all briefed on what exactly happens if we see this change. But we've always said that this was the responsibility of a subcommittee that we call on atmospheric conditions. And Nancy read Peter Gomes, the late, great, beloved Peter Gomes' comments about commencement. And we always said that Peter was the chairman of the subcommittee on atmospheric conditions. And
as we look out today, we see it's a beautiful day, a perfect day, and we know Peter Gomes has done his job, again, blessing this gathering with beautiful weather. You can see people who are, once again, as in the 17th century, the 18th century, the 19th century, the 20th century, and now the 21st century, enjoying the holiday of annual joy in learning. Rennie, people ask me, why is this the 364th commencement and not the 379th? If Harvard was founded in 1636, why is it not the 379th commencement? That's because there were a number of years in the first couple of decades of the college that there were no graduates who were no students who were ready to graduate. But also during the American Revolution, the college buildings here were used to house the troops of the Continental Army, and so there were no classes for a number of years during the American Revolution.
At that time, all of the undergraduates were moved out to Concord, Massachusetts, where they still had college, but it was felt that Concord was far enough away from the potential action that could occur in Cambridge. And all of the dorms, the Harvard, Massachusetts Hall, were used by the troops, as Cambridge itself. And of course, George Washington was located in Wadsworth House, which for years was the president's house. It's now used by administrative offices, but for years was the headquarters for the Harvard Alumni Association. Harvard Alumni Association has now moved to 124 Mount Auburn Street to the top floor there, and the Harvard Fund Council at the lower floors, so it keeps the fundraisers and the fundraisers together.
People ask me, why is it called the Ivy League? Most people think the Ivy League, which was America's first athletic conference, think it's because there's so many walls at this university and others that are ivy covered. However, the reason it's called the Ivy League is that there were 4 colleges that came together in the middle of the 19th century, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, and they created an athletic conference. Because there were 4 universities, they called it Roman numeral 4, which is IV, and that's the origin of Ivy League. Rennie, maybe you could tell us about the order of the ceremonies this afternoon.
Absolutely. The Harvard Alumni Association each year elects a president and a vice president, obviously also a number of committee chairs and so forth, and the committee meets 3 times a year and then meets for the annual meeting as we're going through today. And this year our alumni HAA president is Cynthia Torres. Cynthia graduated in 1980 with an AB, and I should note that it's an AB, which means at that time her degree was in Latin, as was mine anyway, was an AB, therefore, Honoris Baccalaureate. Now they're all BAs because they're in English. But Cynthia also has a Master of Business Administration, 1984. She's the president of College Divisions, an LLC in Santa Monica, California, and she's had a long career service to the Harvard Alumni Association, holding leadership positions in a number of committees, including engagement and marketing, clubs, and significant other groups, which are now known as SIGs, alumni awards, committee to nominate overseers and elected directors, and she's also served on the West Coast Council for the Harvard College Fund since 2008. She will be presiding over the alumni exercises this afternoon.
Rennie, there's a good view of a couple of the top hats, members of the Happy Committee. You see the woman on the left with her fascinator and her rosette, and the man walking across the stage in his top hat. The reason we wear these outfits is so that we are readily visible if students or parents or alumni have questions. Right now, we see Harvard, the Tercentenary Theater slowly filling up. The graduates, the students who graduated this morning have all gone off to their house or their graduate school to have lunch and receive their diplomas. They will be joining us later, so by the end of the afternoon, we should have 35,000 people here to listen to our speaker this afternoon, Deval Patrick, the class of 1978, Harvard Law School, 1981, who will give us the address this afternoon.
As we move along, you will see Nancy pointed out some of our committee members and women in black dresses. There's one now, and varying hats because our committee does not stress hats. They've finally come up. There's a top hat you see down there that we wear. I carry my weather gear in it, but I don't have to use it. But the hats will differ, but many are coming to buy Nancy's hats, which are just lovely. But the question of what women should wear, many years ago, it was required that women wear white. And they had not only a white outfit, but a large red sash that came down in front and was connected at the bottom by a rose or a rosette of some sort. And then women had some awful fedoras. Here you're noting a reunion hat of one of our ladies. I think that's the class of 60 that's coming in there. And the dress code was such that the women really objected and said, listen, we don't have white outfits, and many of them were borrowing them from grandchildren and frankly didn't look very good in them. So we had a committee put together and we listened to all the complaints and we came up to the solution, which was that you could wear either white or black, but you couldn't wear a combination thereof because you would look like Harvard Dining Services.
This afternoon, we will also be hearing from the 28th president of Harvard, Drew Gilpin Faust, who will talk to us about the state of the university. Also this afternoon, there were 5 alumni who will be awarded the Harvard Medal. Charles Egan from the class of 1954 from Kansas City, who has been president of the Harvard Club of Kansas City and has been active as a class leader for the class of 1954 and a schools and scholarship admissions volunteer for many years. Michael Gellert from the class of 1953, who has been an active alum and donor. He has been on the Committee on University Resources. He's been active at the School of Public Health and also active as an alumni leader for the Harvard Library. Thomas Lenz, Jr., master's degree, 81, PhD, 1985, who has been head of the Harvard Art Museum, and he was the leader who spent 13 years of his life to renovate the great Harvard Art Museum, to combine the Fogg with the Sackler and the Bush-Reisinger in a renovation that included a major overhaul of the facility by the architect Renzo Piano. The new Harvard Art Museum opened last November. It is magnificent, and Tom Lenz has done an admirable job of leading that effort, including raising the funds necessary to make that happen. Sandra Moose, master's degree 1965, PhD 1968, who is an active philanthropist in and around Boston, is also receiving the Harvard Medal. And Robert Reischauer, former member of the Harvard Corporation and chief fellow of the president and fellows of Harvard College. Robert Reischauer is from the class of 1963. And tomorrow, as Rennie mentioned, tomorrow Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, will be receiving the Radcliffe Medal. People ask me where the name Radcliffe came from. The first scholarship at Harvard College in 1643, Anne Radcliffe, Lady Molson, gave 100 pounds for the first scholarship at Harvard. And in honor of that, The women's college that is now fully integrated with Harvard was named Radcliffe College.
I have to tell you a story about Charlie Egan. Charlie's wife is Mary Bowersox Egan of the Radcliffe class of 55, so she is celebrating her 60th reunion today too. And Mary wrote in her report, I think it was her 35th, that she noted that one of her reunion reports that Charlie wouldn't eat in any restaurant that didn't use cloth napkins. So she keeps one in the glove compartment of her car, and quote, in case, God forbid, that we are seated before he realizes the situation.
And there we see the statue of John Harvard to the right by Daniel Chester French. We call it a fantasy statue, imaginary statue, because there are no likenesses of John Harvard. We have no idea what he looked like. But that is the statue where we revere John Harvard. And if you can see the bronze, the tip of his shoe is shiny bronze because it's considered good luck to walk by the statue and rub his toe.
There are 3 lies of Harvard, and I always forget one of them, but Nancy mentioned that that's not a likeness of...
There it is. There we see the shiny toe.
Yeah.
So you'll see people, of course, the graduates want their picture in front of him, and then as they pass by, they will rub his toe. That's considered to be good luck.
But you'll note that on the side it says that Harvard was founded in 1636, which is the wrong date. The late is wrong, that he is not actually Harvard. So often we talk about the 3 lies of Harvard. In the old days, when you passed by, either as an undergraduate or graduate, you doffed your hat to John. This is one of the things that for some reason has gone by the way in terms of traditions. I should mention that the Harvard medals, since Nancy mentioned them, they're awarded by the Alumni Association for extraordinary service to Harvard University. The word service includes teaching, administration, fundraising, and other alumni activities. There are usually 3 to 5 medals which have been awarded at each commencement since 1981, except for the 350th in 1986 when they presented 20 medals. And it's interesting to note some of the past recipients. Al Gordon, 23 for the Gordon Track Center, former Radcliffe president Bettina Horner, poet and fundraiser David McCord, hockey coach Bill Clary, class of 56, my old track coach Bill McCurdy, crew coach Harry Barker, and librarian Agnes Marnan, and Kirkland House's superintendent Edward Chamberlain. So you can see there's quite a range of people that have received the Harvard Medal.
During this past year, 2014-2015, this has been the 8th year of President Drew Gilpin Faust's tenure as president of Harvard. We have a new dean of Harvard College, Rakesh Khurana, who's a professor of sociology and a business school professor, and it's the first business school professor to also serve as dean of Harvard College. He is also co-master with his wife Stephanie of Cabot House, one of the undergraduate dorms. We are Cherry Murray, the dean of the School of Engineering and Applied Science, has stepped down, and there is an active search underway for her successor. Archon Fong at the Kennedy School has just been appointed interim Kennedy School dean, as David Elwood, the man who's been the dean of the Kennedy School for the past 11 years, is stepping down as of June 30th. And Julio Frank, who has been the dean of the Harvard School of Public Health, he is leaving to become president of the University of Miami. Harvard, once again, for the 4th year in a row, entered the NCAA basketball tournament under the able coaching of Tommy Amaker. And Harvard, for the 8th year in a row, beat Yale in football once again, this time in a last-minute miraculous play. And I have to say, Rennie, I don't often feel badly for the Yale players, but I certainly did this year because it was a last-minute loss, and we all know how painful that would be.
Difficult. It was mentioned this morning when one of the honorands is the president of Yale, and they really give him quite a ribbing.
We see here on the right Paul Finnegan talking to the bagpiper. Paul Finnegan is the new treasurer of Harvard. We see, here we see one of the classes sitting under the, patiently waiting for the beginning of the afternoon exercises. Fortunately, they are sitting in the shade. It is quite warm here today, but everybody is in a good mood, celebrating the annual joy of learning.
We're going to go back. Nancy mentioned that the head of the dean of the School of Public Health, but it's no longer the School of Public Health. It's the Chen School of Public Health. Mr. Chen gave the university $250 million, and the School of Public Health has been named after him.
You can see, sorry, Rennie, but the woman to the right of the middle of the screen in the light green suit and gold earrings, that's Sandra Moose, one of the Harvard medal recipients today, awarded for her extraordinary service to the university.
And we're down to the left. I think we're seeing Rachel, who is our guide through all of this as chairman of the board services. And I mentioned to her, Rachel Lamson is being who we are very much endeavored to for giving us a lot of this information that we have to pass along to you today.
And here's another view of the alumni procession coming in, and the chief marshal. So this is Farai Chidea and her entourage. She chooses her classmates to be members of her honor guard, and they are now coming into Tercentenary Theater. And then you see the governing boards and the president and fellows of Harvard College. The Harvard Corporation is the oldest corporation in North America. It was founded in the 17th century to govern the university. Then you see the various dignitaries, and then we have the overseers, our board of overseers. We will learn this afternoon who the new overseers will be, and that bell marks the 2:30 beginning of the afternoon ceremony. As soon as the president of the Alumni Association, Cynthia Torres, as soon as she pounds the gavel, we will, Rennie and I will be silent for the ceremony, and then we will come up and do a wrap-up afterwards. So we see the overseers, then the honorary degree recipients, the other officers of the Alumni Association, and I did see Deval Patrick, our speaker, in that crowd of people, now filing down the center aisle of Tercentenary Theater, coming towards the stage.
And when they are located, it was a while before we were smart enough to issue signs to our members of the Happy Committee so that people would know who was coming down, and also those who needed to line up behind them.
There is John Finley IV with Governor Patrick. Governor Patrick has a very interesting history. He was born on the south side of Chicago. His father abandoned the family when Deval was 4 years old. He won a scholarship to Milton Academy, came to Harvard College, then Harvard Law School, had worked for a corporate law firm, and then became Assistant Attorney General of the United States for Civil Rights during the presidency of Bill Clinton. And there we have Deval Patrick in the middle of your screen. He will be our speaker this afternoon. We are looking forward to hearing him.
The first thing, well, our chairman of our WHAA, our president of the HAA, Cynthia Torres, will welcome those here for the gathering. And then we will sing Gaudeamus Igitur, or So Let Us All Rejoice, which is a popular former academic hymn sung in Latin. and despite its uses such as a jocular, light-hearted composition that pokes fun at university life. The song dates to the early 18th century based on a Latin manuscript from 1287. It was known as a beer-drinking song in many ancient universities, and it tells you to live the fullest, even though you know you can die at any time.
There he is, Governor Patrick, our commencement speaker this afternoon. He's speaking with Sandra Moose, who, as I mentioned, is one of the Harvard medalists for today.
Nancy and I think that Governor Patrick at one time was a member of the Happy Committee, but we can't seem to prove it. But I seem to remember him was on. I don't think he was on for very long, but we have many distinguished members on our Happy Committee.
It was when he served as a lawyer for one of the downtown Boston law firms. So there we see President Faust in a black and white jacket, speaking with a member of the Happy Committee. And she, too, will be addressing the alumni, the gathered alumni, this afternoon. Behind her is Paul Finnegan, who is the treasurer.
This looks like a member of the class of
corporation.
1960, I believe, who's celebrating their 55th reunion this year.
There we see the dignitaries who are on the stage, about to sit down.
And the gentleman just to the left of the yellow hat is Philip Lovejoy, our new executive director of the Harvard Alumni Association, as I mentioned, replacing Jack Reardon, who is enjoying his 55th. It's a bit warm out there.
The Harvard Alumni Association was created in 175 years ago in 1840, and the first president was John Quincy Adams. Here in Cambridge, we like to say that John Quincy Adams, while he was president of the United States, he prepared for his presidency of the Harvard Alumni Association.
He was somewhat of a reluctant one, as I recall. Now we're seeing, don't recognize the class, but some of our older grads, they're going to be sorry they didn't wear their reunion hats. It'll be kind of warm out there. Sun shifts around, you think you have a spot in the shade, and all of a sudden you're no longer in the shade.
The man to the right of your screen, Alan Garber, is our provost, the man with the maroon tie, class of 1977.
Now Cynthia will introduce our chief marshal, Farai Chidea. I remember as being the chief marshal in 1980 at the time of our 25th.
There we have President Faust to the left and Paul Finnegan, the treasurer, to the right.
And at that time, we'd reunion for 4 days, and I told my football captain if he would sit next to me up on the stage. Generally, the chief marshal does not say anything on the stage, but I said, look, Tim Anderson, you've got to sit on my left, and anytime my eyes begin to glaze, you've got to tap me on the shoulder, tap me on the arm. I want to tell you, I had a sore arm for weeks.
And there we have former Governor Patrick and alumni as they wait for the afternoon ceremonies to begin.
I see down in the front left there is the member of the class of 1917, been a very active secretary, just up to the right, and the white hair behind the gentleman with his tie on there. He's also been a very loyal member of the Association of Harvard College Class Secretaries and Treasurers, of which both Nancy and I are members. Nancy on the treasurer side and me on the secretarial side.
Now, I don't know if you can hear it, but we have had the Harvard band serenading us, and now the commencement choir is singing Gaudeamus Igitur to entertain the crowds as we await the start of the afternoon exercises. And here is Cynthia Torres, the current president of the Harvard Alumni Association, who is our mistress of ceremonies for the afternoon. And Rennie and I will now be silent until the end, and we do our wrap-up of the afternoon exercises.
Afternoon. Welcome. President Faust, Governor Patrick, fellows of Harvard College, and members of the Board of Overseers, members of the faculty and staff, honored guests, fellow alumni, new graduates, family and friends, those of you who are tuning in from around the world, and my mom and dad. I would like to welcome, thank you. I would like to welcome you to the 2015 annual meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association at Harvard's 364th commencement. I am a member of the college class of 1980. And the business school class of 1984. My name is Cynthia Torres. I am from Santa Monica, California, and it is my honor to serve as the president of the Harvard Alumni Association. As the 136th HAA president, in a line that began in 1840 with U.S. President John Quincy Adams, class of 1787, I raise this gavel and call this meeting to order. This is a special year which celebrates the 175th anniversary of the Harvard Alumni Association. The HAA today welcomes 6,500 new alumni who have graduated, in addition to 14 college reunion classes who mark the anniversary of their graduation, and all the other alumni and alumnae, families and friends who have made it here today and gathered for the happy observance of commencement. I invite you all to join me in opening the afternoon celebration by singing the lively and lighthearted 18th century song, Gaudeamus Igitur, or in English, So Let Us Rejoice. whether you're here to attend a treasured college reunion, here as a graduate or a family member of a graduate, or here for the first time as an invited guest, I invite you to look around and experience the full majesty of Harvard's commencement. Tercentenary Theater, where we are now, was inaugurated in 1936 as a symbol for the unity of Harvard and to celebrate Harvard's 300th anniversary. The soaring spire of Memorial Church and the quiet dignity of Widener Library express the original unifying goals of the university: piety and learning. Here in Tercentenary Theater, Harvard has experienced some of its greatest moments in celebration of freedom, including General George Marshall's 1947 speech outlining a program of massive economic aid to Europe, which was then reeling in the aftermath of World War II. Harvard has conferred awards and degrees in this place on some of our age's greatest contributors, and I am confident that it is doing so today to people who will define the world we pass down to future generations. My own journey to this moment is a source of wonderment for me. Like most of the graduating seniors, I entered Harvard not knowing what to expect. I grew up in urban Los Angeles. My father, who is here sitting in the front row, had grown up in poverty as a migrant farm worker. His 8 brothers and sisters worked in the fields of Central California, and he missed 3 months of school every year to go work in those fields. But that did not keep him from concluding that education was the way out. And I'm sure that same attitude, that education is the key to a successful life, is why many of us worked so hard to come to Harvard. When I entered Harvard, I wasn't sure how I'd fit in, or even if I would. So I'll tell you, my Harvard experience was completely transformative. I found myself debating with friends over dinner in the Lowell House dining room about whether the Fed should raise interest rates. And I became educated through my undergraduate coursework about the history, governments, and cultures of Asia. I routinely met people here at Harvard who were totally different from me and who challenged me to think expansively. It was all so revelatory and set me on a life path that I could never have imagined. By the time I graduated with a great class of 1980, I never wanted my Harvard experience to end. And what I have discovered is that my Harvard experience has turned out to be so much more than my 4 years here in Cambridge. It has been a lifelong connection and engagement that has brought a great deal of meaning to me. I hope that same feeling is also true, or will become true, for all Harvard alumni who are here. One of the great privileges of my life has been to serve as the president of the Harvard Alumni Association. Serving in this role has given me an opportunity to observe our university from a new perspective. Harvard today is committed to changing and improving, and our university has become more global than ever. In my professional life, thanks to my Harvard education, I have become an international citizen, and I worked for many years as a financial services executive in East and Southeast Asia, the region I had studied in college. I have spent much of the past 2 years traveling and speaking to our Harvard Club and shared interest group leaders outside of the US. And I can tell you that our numerous overseas Harvard alumni organizations are strong and vibrant communities. Even if English is your second language and you are a Harvard alum, you will always have a home with us. We in the HAA conduct business in all time zones. The sun never sets on the Harvard Alumni Association. We want to continue to nourish your intellect and to excite your imagination. We welcome your involvement and your enthusiasm, and we share your affection for our beloved university. To our entire Harvard community on this special day, I say 2 words: welcome home. I would now like to discuss and celebrate the alumni who are here. The alumni procession today represents the 320,000 graduates of Harvard University in every part of the world, and I am pleased to recognize the leaders of the procession. Leading the Radcliffe alumni is Evelyn Richmond of the Radcliffe class of 1941, who is turning 94 next week. Evelyn wrote in her 60th reunion report that she was still working with a number of community organizations and that she believes that we can each make a difference, and I want to applaud that too. Thank you, Evelyn. The senior representative of the Harvard College alumni at the age of 97 is Robert Rothschild, class of 1939. Bob wrote in his 65th reunion report that he has been blessed with a marvelous education, parents, siblings, happy children, and the devotion of 2 wonderful women, and that he feels that he still has a lot to look forward to. Hooray for you, Bob. Let's give him another round of applause. Thank you, Evelyn and Robert, for leading our alumni parade. It's an honor to celebrate you today. A spectacular turnout of 800 members of the great class of 1990. Have come together for their festive 25th reunion. It is now my privilege to present a member of the class of 1990, elected by her classmates to serve as Chief Marshal. Our Chief Marshal has led a noteworthy career as a multimedia journalist, author, broadcaster, and commentator. Her award-winning career in journalism includes work for NPR, CNN, ABC News, Newsweek, and MTV. She is currently the Distinguished Writer-in-Residence at New York University's Arthur L. Clarke Journalism Institute. In a field where guiding and educating the next generation of young people is crucial, her long involvement with training and mentoring aspiring arts and culture journalists through her nonprofit work is truly exemplary. With great respect for her commitment to writing and broadcast journalism, I am pleased to introduce the Chief Marshal for Commencement, Farai Chideya of the great class of 1990. Let's give her a round of applause. And will the entire 25th reunion class, seated on stage this special afternoon, please stand and be recognized. Congratulations. On June 30th, I will pass the torch of HAA leadership to one of the Alumni Association's most active and committed supporters, a member of the college class of 1986 and the law school class of 1989. My successor, Paul Choi, is a former president of the Harvard Club of Chicago, and he has been a distinguished elected director and officer on the HAA's board for many years. He has given generously of his time and energy to the university, and in particular to the HAA and to Harvard Law School. Serving as the HAA president has been one of the highlights of my life, and I hope that Paul has some idea of the great fun in store for him over the next year. I know that I leave the HAA in great hands. Mr. President-elect Paul Choi, will you please stand? Next, it is my pleasure to announce the results of this spring's election for Harvard's Board of Overseers and the elected directors of the Harvard Alumni Association. We are grateful to each of the candidates for their willingness to stand for election and be of service to the governance of Harvard. Thank you to each of you who voted and participated. 5 exceptional individuals have been elected to serve 6-year terms on the Board of Overseers. The Harvard Board of Overseers is virtually unique as a university governing body elected entirely by alumni. Elected to the Board of Overseers are R. Martin Chavez of New York, Fernanda Duffley of Boston, Brian Green of New York, Beth Y. Carlin of Los Angeles, California, and John Sylvanus Wilson Jr. of Atlanta, Georgia. Please join me in congratulating our new overseers. Next, the alumni also elected 6 dynamic directors of the Harvard Alumni Association to serve 3-year terms, together with the directors for clubs and shared interest groups and the appointed directors. The new elected HAA directors are Paige Enos of Washington, D.C., Ellen M. Guidera of Santiago, Chile, Andrew Hurwitz of New York, Sharon E. Jones of Chicago, Illinois, Tracy Ty Moore II of Oakland, California, and Ariel Zwang of New York. Please join me in congratulating our new overseers and elected directors. One of the happiest duties of the HAA president is to contact a few special people during the year with the news that they have won awards given by the university. The Harvard Medal, created in 1981, is the highest of these honors and recognizes extraordinary service to the university. The 5 recipients, who are all with us today, merit this recognition for their exemplary and inspirational devotion. Your programs describe the many ways in which the 2015 Harvard Medal winners have enriched the university. President Faust will read the citations. Will each medalist please stand as your name is announced?
Charles J. Egan. Whether setting records in the pool as a student athlete or in class reunion giving as an alumnus, you are a Crimson captain through and through, leaving your hallmark on the university as president of the Harvard Alumni Association and the Harvard Club of Kansas City, co-chair of the Harvard College Fund, and a passionate supporter of athletics, financial aid, and house renewal. Charlie Egan. Michael E.A. Gellert, devoted alumnus, committed volunteer, and proud Harvard parent. You have embodied the spirit of One Harvard through your dedicated and continuing service across the university, from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences to the Radcliffe Institute to the Harvard Library. Michael Gellert. Thomas W. Lentz. With characteristic aplomb and vision, you led the transformation of the Harvard Art Museums, bringing 3 renowned institutions under one glorious glass roof, reimagining the place of art in the life of the university, and creating a teaching machine that will benefit faculty, students, and the public for generations to come. Tom Lentz. Sandra Orn Moose, trailblazer for women in business, role model for civic engagement, and catalyst for alumni involvement with decades of service to the university and to the Graduate School of Arts and Sciences. You have enhanced the quality of student life and empowered Harvard scholars to reach new heights of academic excellence. Sandra Moose. Robert D. Reischauer, a stalwart champion of good governance from Capitol Hill to Harvard Yard. You provided sage and savvy leadership on Harvard's governing boards for nearly 2 decades, deftly guiding the corporation as senior fellow through historic reforms that have broadened its angle of vision and sharpened its eye on the future. Bob Reischauer.
Thank you, President Faust. Please join me in giving a round of applause to all of our Harvard medalists. I would like now to salute all of our new graduates from all of Harvard's schools. This morning, after receiving their degrees from the college and the graduate schools, 6,500 new alumni entered the Fellowship of Educated Men and Women. I would like to welcome all of our new graduates to their new Harvard community, the Harvard Alumni Association. All graduates automatically become lifelong members of the Harvard Alumni Association with the many privileges and resources that confers. Class of 2015, I also want to congratulate your parents. and to thank your families, friends, faculty, and staff across the university, all the people who have believed in you and supported you throughout your time at Harvard, and those who are not here with us today, but who would be very proud and who are very much with us in spirit. When the Harvard Alumni Association was founded in 1840, there were no more than 10,000 living alumni. Today, you join over 320,000 Harvard alumni, including 17% who live outside of the United States in 189 countries. Please join me in welcoming our new graduates to the Harvard Alumni Association. A great university like Harvard depends on deeply engaged alumni around the world who provide the university with an important pool of advice and contacts, who support our institution, serve as our ambassadors, and volunteer our time. We alumni carry the Harvard name throughout the world in the work that we do. Our medalists today are representative of the extraordinary devotion of our alumni to Harvard. They are joined by a core of tens of thousands of alumni who give of their time and talents to support our university in important ways. Our nearly 250 Harvard clubs and shared interest groups around the world that are run by volunteers, over 15,000 alumni interviewers for Harvard College, and over 18,000 alumni who volunteer to serve as career advisors to our students and to each other. So as we celebrate today, we also want to express our appreciation to our alumni and friends, students and parents, faculty and staff. Thank you for all that you do for this great university. To all the volunteers committed to connecting Harvard's alumni, thank you for all you have done this year and all that you will continue to do. This week, thousands of alumni and guests have returned to campus in a great show of commitment to the community of Harvard, including our oldest reunion class, the great 70th reunion class of 1945. Many alumni come back for their Harvard and Radcliffe College reunions to connect with each other and to experience the campus of today, and they show their support through impressive levels of giving. Under the leadership of many volunteers, including college reunion committees and the class secretaries and treasurers, we've drawn more than 6,000 alumni and guests to Cambridge this week and helped generate nearly 5,400 gifts as of May 28th. I'd like to take a moment to describe the effects that your continued engagement and profound support have on our university. Thanks to support from more than 115,000 households over the course of the ongoing campaign, a Harvard College degree is within reach of every accepted student, regardless of their financial circumstances. The computer science faculty will grow by 50%, meeting the growing demand of students. New undergraduate concentrations will allow students to further explore their passions, including the launch this fall of an undergraduate concentration in theater, dance, and media. The houses that many of us called home are being updated to fit the needs of 21st century students. And thanks to your support, researchers across the university have access to funding for cutting-edge, cross-disciplinary work that will change the world. It's a bright future for this institution that we cherish, and it's made possible in no small part thanks to your generosity. We are fortunate to have so many committed volunteers who work tirelessly on the college's reunion planning and fundraising efforts this year. I'd like to highlight several of our classes celebrating milestone reunions. We want to thank the great class of 1965 celebrating their 50th reunion, led by an outstanding group of program co-chairs and campaign committee co-chairs. Can I ask those from the class of 1965 on the stage to stand so that we can thank you for your service? The class of 1965 has 600 classmates and guests in attendance and had more than 40% of their class contribute in honor of this occasion. And I think we owe them a round of applause for that commitment. And this year's 25th reunion, the great class of 1990, under the leadership of its reunion program co-chairs and reunion campaign co-chairs, has generated impressive attendance and giving, with 1,900 classmates and guests in attendance, and more than 30% of the class giving in support of the university. Could I ask the program and campaign co-chairs of the class of 1990 to please stand so we can thank you for your service. And now, would all members of Harvard College Reunion Program committees and reunion campaign committees in every class please stand? Can I ask them all to stand? Everybody who's participated on their College Reunion Program Committee or Reunion Campaign Committee, and let's give them a round of applause. And now, I would like to thank our newest alumni, the Harvard College class of 2015. The Senior Class Committee, which throughout the year has brought their class together through over 20 events, including Class Day yesterday, is represented on stage today by Tsitsi Goford and Shizim Akpala, the first and second class marshals. In addition, under the leadership of Katie Gamble, Cindy Guan, Tyann Hao He, Alyssa Song, and Sharon Stavesky, more than 1,000 members of the class of 2015 contributed to their senior gift, 30% of which were recurring gifts. Would the marshals and senior gift co-chairs for the class of 2015 please stand and be recognized? And please join me in giving them a round of applause. To all of you, our dedicated citizens of Harvard, we continue to be inspired by your volunteerism and your philanthropy. Thank you so much. To celebrate our extraordinary volunteers and our entire alumni community, please join the Harvard University Band and the Commencement Choir in their performance of Harvardiana. The words are in your program. is now my distinct pleasure to introduce to you the Harvard University President, Drew Gilpin Faust. She is an eloquent and ardent champion of a liberal arts education in its broadest sense, an embrace of the arts and humanities, as well as engineering and technology, and the social and natural sciences. During her 8 years as Harvard's president, she has given us a new way to see and experience the university as one Harvard, an institution that promotes cohesion through inter-school collaboration. Under President Faust's leadership, the university has dramatically expanded financial aid as a way to attract and support the best students, including aid to graduate and international students. Her deep commitment to financial aid has forever transformed the lives of thousands of students. I have had the honor of traveling with President Faust around the globe this year to speak to large alumni audiences. Our destinations have included Beijing, Mexico City, Chicago, Dallas, and Seattle. The crowds flock to hear her, and President Faust leads both by inspiring others and by her own fine example. Please join me in welcoming Harvard's 28th president, the Lincoln Professor of History, Drew Gilpin Faust.
Thank you, President Torres. Welcome, Governor Patrick. Thank you, everyone, for being here. The 146th annual meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association at the 364th commencement of Harvard University. It's a particular pleasure to welcome former Governor Deval Patrick of the college class of 1978 and the Harvard Law School class of 1982. Throughout his distinguished career in government, he forcefully argued for the power of education to transform lives. Nothing made that case more persuasively than his own remarkable life, from Chicago's South Side to the Massachusetts State House. When he was sworn in as governor, he took the oath of office with the Mende Bible, presented in 1841 by the African captives who had seized the slave ship Amistad, to the man who had won their legal right to freedom, John Quincy Adams. Governor Patrick can claim connection with both the African heritage of the Amistad rebels and the institutional roots of their defender. Adams, as you heard before from President Torres, was a member of the Harvard College class of 1787 and was both the first president of this alumni association and himself the son of an earlier alumnus, John Adams, of the class of 1755. That kind of continuity across the centuries is not the least of the reasons that we congregate here every spring to renew and reinforce our ties to this extraordinary place. Let me start by noticing what is both obvious and curious. We are here today together. We are here in association. It's an association of many people and many generations. We celebrate a connection across time in these festival rites, singing our alma mater, adorning ourselves in medieval robes to mark the deep-rooted traditions of Harvard and of universities more generally. Even in the age of the online and the virtual, an institution has brought us together and brings us back. We have also sung, or rather the magnificent Renee Fleming has sung, America the Beautiful, to honor another institution, our democratic republic, which the men and women whose names are carved in stone in Memorial Church right behind me and Memorial Hall just behind that gave their lives to protect and uphold. When the founders of the Massachusetts Bay Colony arrived on these shores in 1630, they came as dissenters, rejecting institutions of their English homeland. But I've always found it striking that here in the wilderness, where mere survival was the foremost challenge, they so rapidly felt compelled to found this seat of learning, so that New England, in the words of William Hubbard of the class of 1642, so that New England might be supplied with persons fit to manage the affairs of both church and state. Church, state, and college. 3 institutions they deemed essential to this Massachusetts experiment. 3 institutions to ensure that the colonists, as Governor John Winthrop urged, could be knit together as one in a new society, in a brave new world. Dozens of generations have come and gone since then, and the university's footprint has expanded considerably beyond a small cluster of wooden buildings. But we have never lost faith in the capacity of each generation to build a better society than the one it was born into. We have never lost faith in the capacity of this college to help make that possible. As an early founder, Thomas Shepard, put it, we hope to graduate into the world people who are, in his words, enlarged toward the country and the good of it. Yet now, nearly 4 centuries later, we find ourselves in a challenging historical moment. How do we enlarge our graduates? A new job for the treasurer. How do we enlarge our graduates in a way that benefits others as well? Shepard spoke of enlarging toward, as he put it, the country and the good of it. Are we succeeding in educating students oriented toward the betterment of others? Or have we all become so caught up in individual and personal achievements, opportunities, and appearances that we risk forgetting our interdependence, our responsibilities to one another and to the institutions meant to promote the common good? This is the era of the selfie and the selfie stick. Now, don't get me wrong, there's much to love about selfies. And 2 years ago, in my baccalaureate address, I concluded by urging the graduates to send such pictures along so that we could keep up with them in their post-Harvard lives. But think for a moment about the implications of a society that goes through life taking its own picture. That seems to me a quite literal embodiment of self-regarding, a term not often used as a compliment. In fact, Merriam-Webster Dictionary offers egocentric, narcissistic, and selfish as synonyms. We direct endless attention to ourselves, our image, our likes, just as we are encouraged, and in fact encourage our students to burnish resumes and fill first college and then job or graduate school applications with endless lists of achievements, with examples, to borrow Shepard's language, of constant enlargements of self. As one social commentator has observed, we are ceaselessly at work building our own brands. We spend time looking at screens instead of one another. Large portions of our lives are hardly experienced. They are curated, shared, Snapchatted, and Instagrammed, rendered as a kind of composite selfie. Now, a certain amount of self-absorption is in our nature. As Harvard's own E.O. Wilson has recently written, and I quote him, "We are an insatiably curious species, provided the subjects are our personal selves and people we would know or would like to know." But I want to underscore two troubling aspects of this obsession with ourselves. The first is, it undermines our sense of responsibility to others. The ethos of service at the heart of Thomas Shepard's phrase describing Harvard's enduring commitment to graduate students who are enlarged to be about more than themselves, not just enlarged for their own sake and betterment, but enlarged toward others and toward the world. This is part of the essence of what this university has always strived to be. Our students and faculty have embodied that spirit through their work to serve in our neighborhood and around the world. From tutoring at the Harvard Ed Portal in Alston to working in Liberia to mitigate the Ebola crisis, they make a difference in the lives of countless individuals. The Dexter Gate across the yard invites students to enter to grow in wisdom, depart to serve better thy country and thy kind. Today, some 6,500 graduates go forth. May each of them remember that it is in some way to serve. There is yet another danger we should note as well. Self-absorption may obscure not only our responsibilities to others, but our dependence upon them. And this is troubling for Harvard, for higher education, and for fundamental social institutions whose purposes and necessity we forget at our peril. Why do we even need college, critics demand? Can't we do it all on our own? Peter Thiel, Silicon Valley entrepreneur, has urged students to drop out and has even subsidized them, including several of our undergraduates, to leave college and pursue their individual entrepreneurial dreams. After all, the logic goes, Mark Zuckerberg and Bill Gates dropped out, and they seem to have done okay. Well, yes, but we should remember, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg had Harvard to drop out of. Harvard. Harvard to serve as the place where their world-changing discoveries were born. Harvard and institutions like it to train the physicists, mathematicians, computer scientists, business analysts, lawyers, and thousands of other skilled individuals upon whom Facebook and Microsoft depend. Harvard to enlighten public servants to lead a country in which Facebook, Microsoft, and companies like them can thrive. Harvard to nurture the writers and filmmakers and journalists who create the storied content that gives the internet its substance. And we must recognize as well that universities have served as sources of discoveries essential to the work of the companies advancing the revolutions in technology that have changed our lives. From early successes in creating and programming computers to development of prototypes that laid groundwork for the now ubiquitous touchscreen. We are told, too, that universities are about to be unbundled, disrupted by innovations that enable individuals to teach themselves, selecting from a buffet of massive open online courses and building do-it-yourself degrees. But online opportunities and residential learning are not at odds. The former can strengthen, but does not supplant the latter. And through initiatives like edX and HarvardX, we are sharing intellectual riches that are the creations of institutions of higher learning, sharing them with millions of people around the globe. Intriguingly, we have found that a highly represented group among these online learners around the world is teachers who will use this knowledge to enrich their own schools and face-to-face classrooms. Assertions about the irrelevance of universities are part of a broader and growing mistrust of institutions more generally, one fueled by our intoxication with the power and charisma of the individual and the cult of celebrity. Government, business, nonprofits are joined with universities as targets of suspicion and criticism. There are few countervailing voices to remind us how institutions serve and support us. We tend to take what they do for granted. Your food was safe. Your blood test was reliable. Your polling place was open. Electricity was available when you flipped the switch. Your flight to Boston took off and landed according to rules and systems and organizations responsible for safe air travel. Just imagine a week or a month without this civic infrastructure, without the institutions that undergird our society, and without the commitment to our interdependence that created these structures of commonality in the first place. Think of the countries in West Africa that lack the public health systems to contain Ebola and the devastation that resulted. Contrast that with the network of institutions that so rapidly saved lives and contained spread of the disease when it appeared in the United States. Think about other elements of our civic infrastructure: the libraries, the museums, the school committees, the religious organizations that are as vital to moving us forward as are our roads and railways and bridges. Institutions embody our present and enduring commitments to one another. They bring our disparate talents and capacities to the pursuit of common purpose. At the same time, they link us to both what has come before and what will follow. They are repositories of values, values that precede, transcend, and outlast the self. They challenge us to look beyond the immediate, the instantly gratifying, to think about the bigger picture, the longer run, the larger whole. They remind us that the world is only temporarily ours, that we are stewards entrusted with the past and responsible to the future. We are larger than ourselves and our selfies. That responsibility is quintessentially the work of universities, calling upon our shared human heritage to invent a new future, the future that will be created by the thousands of graduates who leave here today. Our work is about that ongoing commitment, not to a single individual or even one generation or one era, but to a larger world and to the service of the age that is waiting before. In 1884, my predecessor, Charles William Eliot, unveiled a statue of John Harvard and spoke of the good that can come from the study of what we might call the enlarged life of the man whose name this university bears. Eliot said, "He will teach that the good which men do lives after them, fructified and multiplied beyond all power of measurement or computation. He will teach that from the seed which he planted have sprung joy, strength, and energy ever fresh, blooming year after year in this garden of learning, and flourishing as time goes on in all fields of human activity." In other words, That statue we paraded past this afternoon is not simply a monument to an individual, but to a community and an institution constantly renewing itself. Your presence here today represents an act of connection and of affirmation of that community and of this institution. It's a recognition of Harvard's capacity to propel you towards lives and worlds beyond your own. I thank you for the commitment that brought you here today and for all it means and sustains. I wish you joy, strength, and energy ever fresh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Faust, for your guidance and leadership, for your inspiring words, for your support of our alumni, and for upholding the principles of the university. Your commitment and devotion to our university is truly remarkable, and I know that everyone here looks forward to continuing to work with you and to supporting you in the years ahead. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving another round of applause to President Faust. To honor the contributions of Radcliffe College and its alumni, and to mark its historical significance for men and women alike, please stand and join in singing Radcliffe, Now We Rise to Greet Thee. The words are in your program. Our guest speaker, Deval L. Patrick, loyal son of Harvard and the 71st governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, is one of the most exceptional people America has produced in our generation. In his memoirs, which I commend to everybody here, he has called his voyage an improbable life. It is that and more. But knowing him as I do, and Deval has been a special friend to my family for more than 30 years. He is also a dedicated supporter of many important causes, a speaker of soaring eloquence, but with, at the same time, a light touch and a great sense of humor, and a dedicated husband and father. Deval is a descendant of slaves, with a father who abandoned his family when Deval was 4 years old. He left his home on Chicago's tough South Side at the age of 14 after winning a scholarship to Milton Academy. Deval graduated from Harvard College, class of 1978, and from Harvard Law School, class of 1982, where he became president of the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau. For over 20 years, Duvall then led a distinguished career, both in the private sector and through his appointment by President Clinton to the nation's top civil rights post, Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division. Duvall announced his candidacy for governor of Massachusetts in 2005, and by virtue of a true grassroots campaign, won the governorship despite its being his first race for elective office. Duvall became the first African-American governor in the history of the Commonwealth, serving 2 terms from 2006 through last year. His administration emphasized strong support for public education at all levels, respect for the environment, and encouraged the vigorous growth of the life sciences and clean technology industries. Duvall has recently returned to the private sector, launching a new line of business for Bain Capital in Boston that focuses on social impact investing and tackling problems such as hunger and climate change. As an alumnus, Duvall has been a familiar and welcome figure on the Harvard campus and an inspiring role model. I would like to thank you, Duvall, for making this Commonwealth a better, fairer place to live. Your improbable life has ennobled each of us by virtue of your idealism, your hard work, and your special spark. Please join me in welcoming a man who embodies what Harvard means and should mean to all of us, our own former governor of Massachusetts, Duvall Patrick.
Thank you. To President Torres and directors of the Harvard Alumni Association, thank you very much for that generous introduction. I hope to become the man you described. To President Faust, fellows of Harvard College and members of the Board of Overseers, to Provost Garber and members of the faculty and staff, to the members of the reunion classes and all of the distinguished guests, proud families and friends, and most especially deserving graduates of the class of 2015. I am deeply honored to be with you today, humbled, in fact, to be in the company of my fellow honorands, both those honored today and throughout the university's storied history. And I'm awed to be in the presence of all the brain power and promise gathered here this afternoon. But I am also a little intimidated. 41 years ago, when I was a freshman in Hallworthy over there, surrounded by my brilliant new classmates, I was convinced there would come a soft knock at the door one night from the Dean of Admissions with the awkward news that my admission had been a mistake and that I should quietly gather my things. I often feel that way here in Cambridge, not just at this august institution. I've spent the past semester as a visiting fellow at the Innovation Institute at MIT. Now, while some of my vintage may still refer to MIT derisively as that vocational school just downriver, I met students there who were already dazzling Nobel laureates with their inventions as teenagers. Even campaigning for governor was a special challenge in Cambridge. I can't even count the number of times out on the trail when I was asked a policy question by someone who had already written a book on the subject. I trace these feelings in part to the fact that as a kid, Harvard was not part of my universe. I grew up, as Cynthia said, on welfare on the south side of Chicago and was the first in my family to go to college. When I told my grandmother I'd been admitted to Harvard, she screamed with pride and delight, and then she paused and asked, "Now where is that anyway?" That same grandmother would be proud today. She would react to the feelings I've described having when I'm in this rarefied community by smiling and saying, "It keeps you humble." Of course, a Cantabrigian would more likely sniff and paraphrase Winston Churchill and quip that I have much to be humble about. All of which is to say to you graduates in particular today that I know how gifted you are, how well prepared you are, how high achieving and sought after you are. I know how confident you are in your talents and your opinions. And I know the world needs much of what you have to offer. The world is indeed yours for the taking. Even so, I want to urge you to be a little uneasy. I'm not talking about the kind of unease all new graduates feel about careers or money or romance. I'm not inviting you to feel envious of your classmates' accomplishments or unworthy of your own. I'm talking about the kind of unease that comes from being a little unsure that you already know all you need to know. The kind of restlessness that compels you to look beyond yourself for answers and meaning. You graduates came to Harvard with big ideas, and you leave with big capacities. But still, as my grandmother would say, what you don't know could fill a book. As far as you have journeyed to achieve today's milestone, your education is in fact incomplete. Think of yourselves instead as educated more in the sense that Louis Pasteur described, as learning to listen to anything without losing your confidence or your temper. Because if you are listening with unease, you will hear the yearnings of a restless world. I'm not sure we were listening very closely to those yearnings when I was an undergraduate. In the mid-1970s, Harvard had just settled down from a long season of student unrest. A few years before, student protests over the Vietnam War had rocked this campus, and women moving into the formerly all-male river houses had been a source of widespread upset. Only a few years before that, grandmothers and school kids, preachers and sharecroppers had marched over the Edmund Pettus Bridge in Selma to demand access to the ballot. In other words, on the eve of my arrival on this campus, civil and human rights and indeed issues of war and peace were matters of current events. By the time I got to campus, students were comparatively complacent. Because we had missed all the fun, we occasionally acted out in offbeat ways. In Dunster House, we got all exercised over the decision to stop serving hot breakfast in the dining hall. Cold cereal, fruit, yogurt, pastries, juice, coffee, all this would be available every morning. But if we wanted an egg, we'd have to walk a block to Leverett House. Outrageous! So one spring morning, we marched on Leverett, complete with banners, beating drums, and scores of fellow students never before seen at breakfast time. We took to the streets over pancakes. So it's a marvelous improvement, in my view, to see students these days take to the streets over issues of real consequence. In response to the yawning economic gap between the rich and the poor in this country, workers and students and many others set up tent camps on Wall Street, and the Occupy movement quickly spread to many other cities, including Boston. The killings of unarmed black men by unaccountable police officers in Ferguson, Missouri, and Staten Island, New York, moved young people and many others to take to the streets to proclaim Black Lives Matter. The failure of national policymakers and citizens alike to reverse climate change compels students, faculty, and alumni on this campus and others to ignite a new divestment movement. Predictably, each of these actions has been criticized. The Occupy movement is faulted for having no agenda beyond discontent, for having called attention to the critical truth that social mobility, a central feature of the American idea, is disappearing without offering a solution. The marchers under the banner of Black Lives Matter are faulted for similar shortcomings, for trying to shut down highway traffic instead of proposing specific programs and policies to help us heal the devastating lack of understanding between police and young black men. Climate change activists are faulted for putting symbols above substance by demanding divestment in fossil fuel companies when this is widely believed to be unlikely to affect anybody's actual behavior. I share some of those concerns, but I am also grateful that students today are putting far more important issues on the table than hot breakfast. Indeed, I welcome the engagement of today's generation of activists and the heightened consciousness they have demanded of the rest of us. And I am hopeful that those in power will make more of the profound ends they seek than of the imperfect means of their protest. Don't get me wrong. I hate mob behavior. I hate violence of any kind. I don't want unrest in the streets. But I do want unrest in our hearts and minds. I do want us all to be uneasy about the grim realities of black men and families and the widespread nonchalance about poverty. I want us to be uneasy about the chronic desperation of communities some of us are just one generation away from living in, about the way we dehumanize the fellow souls we call alien, about the carelessness with which we treat the planet itself. I want us to ask ourselves hard questions and to ask our leaders hard questions about the state of the American dream, why the poor are stuck in poverty, and why the middle class are just one paycheck away from being poor. And I want us all to be a little uncomfortable about how few of our comforts we share. I want us to be uneasy because if enough of us are uneasy, we might begin to feel some urgency about finding the solutions to the things that make us so. I honor the work that many philanthropies and government programs and individual saints do to show compassion and kindness to others. As governor, I saw up close the practical impact that affordable housing or sentencing reform or a great teacher has on an individual, on a family, or on a neighborhood. And if policy matters most where it touches people, maybe it's the point of individual contact that we should celebrate most. But somehow to settle for only that is to make peace with large-scale suffering, to accept the way things are as the way they ought to be. And to me, that seems fundamentally un-American. This is the only nation in human history organized around a set of civic aspirations, not religion or language or geography or even a common culture, none of the things that normally organize a nation, but instead a handful of transcendent civic ideals. And we have defined those values over time and through struggle as freedom, equality, opportunity, and fair play. These are the ties that bind us across time and all sorts of mostly superficial differences, and that have made America the envy of the world. As one great Israeli statesman puts it, America is the only superpower whose power comes from giving, not from taking. Indeed, our greatest gift to this poor black kid from Chicago and to strivers of every type and kind for generations is a reason to hope. In fits and starts through our history, those values have compelled us to reach higher, to do big things. And I worry that as a nation, we are forgetting how. Over 16 million of our neighbors and family members who once couldn't can now afford to see a doctor, thanks to the President's health care reforms. And yet, we focus on the embarrassing fact that at the outset the website didn't work, as if that discredits the objective itself. Our roads, rails, and bridges are in a state of dangerous disrepair, needing years of focused work. And the best our Congress can muster is funding for 2 months before they leave on vacation. When President Faust called to invite me to address you this morning or afternoon, she reminded me that from this very podium, General George C. Marshall announced the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe after World War II. I wonder what reaction General Marshall's idea would elicit today. A collective groan, a wistful sigh, and yet across America and across the globe, big ideas are exactly what the world craves. The graduates of this university are trained to think big. Will you be uneasy enough to act big? What will you do with what you know? You know that the answer to chronic poverty is opportunity. That opportunity comes from an economy that grows out to the marginalized, not just up to the well-connected. And you know that economic growth of this kind requires a massive reinvestment of ideas and money by industry and by government in schools, in infrastructure, and in the innovation industries that are fueling the future. You know that community policing, where police are of and in the communities they serve, is a strategy that makes us safer. And you also know that whatever methods we pursue for better policing, race and racism is still too close to the surface of everything from commerce to the Twitter commentary about whom celebrities date. You know that what's happening in Ferguson or Baltimore is but the frayed edge of a neglect that is undermining our country, and that declaring ourselves officially race-blind or post-racial as a way to end division and discord is neither honest nor responsible. You know that climate change is too serious a threat to human survival to tolerate anything less than an orderly and purposeful shift to a carbon-limited, if not carbon-free economy. And you also know that that requires a plan with all players, yes, including big oil and coal at the table, and that the way to move us all together is to seize the countless opportunities to create wealth and jobs which such a transition has and will present. Poverty, racism, climate change, big, even daunting challenges. But every one is of our own making, and surely therefore cannot be beyond our capacity to care about and to solve. We have leaders here in this graduating class ready to chart a course to that higher ground, ready to listen for the needs and the answers that are rising from community and to drive the innovations and make the sacrifices necessary to save our country and our kind. We need you, and we need you to be uneasy. We need uneasy leaders who can get outside your own ambitions and think about the world's. We need uneasy leaders who won't let your ideals be casualties of your confrontations with reality, who refuse, as Dr. King said, to accept despair as the final response to the ambiguities of history. We need uneasy leaders straining to hear the yearnings of the powerless as clearly as we do the expectations of the powerful, and willing to think and to act big. I'm especially proud of the performance of Massachusetts students during my tenure as governor. I'm proud of the fact that not only did we fund the schools at record highs in each of the years I served, even during the global economic collapse, but our students ranked first in the nation in student achievement each year and at or near the top in the world in math and science. And yet, for nearly 2 decades that we've been on our education reform journey here in Massachusetts, achievement gaps persisted. And the kids stuck in those gaps are poor, or kids with special needs, or kids who speak English as a second language. Of course, to have an achievement gap at all is an educational and an economic challenge. But to let it languish for as long as we had was, to my mind, a moral question, because those are our children too. And that made us uneasy. So we set to work on a big reform, and we faced all the predictable hurdles and naysayers. The charter advocates had one certain answer, the teachers' union had another. The business community had yet another. Parents in suburbs had one set of demands not always consistent with parents in cities, and so on and so on. In the end, we put the children first. We acknowledge that all children can learn and that all have their own ways of doing so. And ultimately, we crafted a piece of legislation that provided new rules and tools to meet children where they are. It was a triumph of every interest group for the common interest. And slowly but demonstrably, we are closing achievement gaps in Massachusetts. What was the big idea? That no child's destiny should be defined by her zip code of birth. I visited a school in Boston that was using all of these new tools. On every measure, in just a few years, that school had lifted itself from one of the worst in the city to one of the best in the state. Its students were proud of their achievements and purposeful about their future. You could see it not just in their test scores, but in their eyes, their posture, their attitudes. They have not yet overcome their poverty. They have steep hills yet to climb, but they will climb them because now they have a reason to hope, and they are making the very best of it. They and children like them everywhere are the reason the idealism of you graduates matters. I'm not asking you to live in a world of ideals alone. Idealism is no substitute for hard-nosed problem solving. To make change, you have to gain influence and use power to develop policy and implement action plans to be accountable. You have to organize. But ideals let us imagine big ideas. And you can't organize what you can't imagine. So I welcome you graduates to a world of big needs in search of big thinking and big actions. I welcome you to a world where a few will find countless reasons why you can't, while countless masses silently pray you will. I welcome you to a world where great beauty and extravagant kindness live side by side with unspeakable cruelty, suffering, and neglect. And I challenge you to be so uneasy about that you are compelled to ask who but you should act. Good luck and God bless you, class of 2015. Thank you very much.
thank you, Duvall, for challenging us and pointing us in directions of hope. And thank you for working for the benefit of all people. I hope that the big ideas you highlight concerning access, social mobility, and the state of the American dream will galvanize many of us into action. We are truly honored by your presence and by your thoughts. We wish you the best as you undertake new challenges ahead. Please join me in giving Duvall Patrick another round of applause. No Harvard celebration would be complete without singing our school song. Before we close these afternoon exercises of Harvard's 364th commencement, please stand and join me as we sing. The words to Fair Harvard appear in your program. On behalf of the Harvard Alumni Association, let me once again welcome and congratulate the class of 2015. You join, yay, let's give them a round of applause. You join the world's most respected alumni community, and we enthusiastically welcome you into the fellowship of educated men and women. May the joy of this day remain always with you. Honored guests, fellow alumni and friends, thank you for being here. Thank you for your support of Harvard, and please return for this occasion next year. I now hereby declare the 2015 meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association adjourned to reconvene on May 26, 2016 for the 147th annual meeting of the Harvard Alumni Association. Thank you for coming.
And so we come to the end of the 145th Association, which was part of Harvard's 364th commencement. We heard President Drew Faust. Rennie, can you give us the highlights?
Yes, President Faust thanks Dival Patrick for all he had done for education while serving 2 terms as the Commonwealth's governor. She noted that the church, state, and college held the Commonwealth together and never lost faith to the improvement of the Commonwealth for each generation. She underscored 2 aspects of efforts at Harvard: the sense of responsibilities to others and the dependence on others during their life here at Harvard, their undergraduates. She noted that many voices shaped our lives, which develop our values and challenge us, and remind us to trust the present for the responsibility for the future. A new generation that were developed by our new graduates today.
And we heard commencement speaker, former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick, Harvard College class of 78, Harvard Law School class of 82, deliver a passionate speech to the graduates of the class of 2015, urging them to be uneasy about the problems that face our world, to think big and act big, to use their talents and their Harvard education to resolve the large issues of our time, and to go toward those who are more unfortunate on issues like the achievement gap, poverty, racism, climate change, income inequality. He urged the graduates to follow their ideals, organize, use their power to be effective, to a world in need of big ideas and big action. He challenged the graduates to be uneasy about the big issues and to ask themselves who but you should act to make the world a better place. Rennie?
Finally, Nancy and I want to thank you for listening to us. We hope that we provided an interesting time for those of you that couldn't be here to join us. We do hope you'll join us next year. And finally, we want to thank our Crammer crew today. Ed Demason is having his 25th year of doing this. Ed McNamara, and thanks to Kathy O'Connell, who's been so helpful to us in keeping on the straight and narrow. Please do come back and hear it all next year. We'll have another class that will graduate from the great University of Harvard.
And I will close with a reading of the Villanelle for an Anniversary, written for Harvard's 350th celebration in 1986 by Seamus Hamey, who was a professor here at Harvard. John Harvard walks the yard. A spirit moved. John Harvard walked the yard. The atom lay unsplit, the west unwon. The book stood open and the gates unbarred. The maps dreamt on like moon dust. Nothing stirred. The future was a verb in hibernation. A spirit moved. John Harvard walked the yard. Before the classic style, before the clabbered, all through the small hours of an origin, the book stood open and the gate unbarred. Night passage of a migratory bird, wing flap, gown flap. Like a homing pigeon, a spirit moved. John Harvard walked the yard. Was that his soul? Look, sped to its reward by grace or works, a shooting star, an omen. The book stood open and the gate unbarred. Begin again where frosts and tests were hard. Find yourself her founder, here, imagine, a spirit moves, John Harvard walks the yard. The books stand open and the gates unbarred.